Hello, this is Danny Blyth from the College of Integrated Chinese Medicine looking at external causes of disease. Remember, this is not for the general public, it's for acupuncture students only. Please pause and read this. So, little history in the Su Wen, the simple questions, they talk about the 6 Qi, the 6 types of weather, as being the cause of the 100 diseases. Chen Yin talked about the 6 excesses. An excess of one of the pathogens, wind, cold, damp, dryness, summer heat, and heat. The Su Wen talked about fire. He was also the first person to divide it into internal causes, the emotions, external causes, which we're going to talk about now, and the miscellaneous causes, which you'll see are the not internal and not external causes, so lifestyle factors. And the idea of external pathogenic factors causing illness was developed in the Shanhan Lun, wind cold penetrating through the 6 stages, and later in the Wenbing Lung, the wind heat penetrating through the 4 levels. So an external pathogenic factor might be the climate or the weather. We talk about a damp summer. It might be our environment, like a damp house. It might be an infective agent, as we talked about the 6 stages, 4 levels. And it might be an antigen, so people respond with allergies in the same way that they respond as if it was an infection. So we compare the internal environment in illness to the external environment and pathogenic influences. So we generally live in balance with these pathogenic influences. They only become a problem if our Wei Qi, our defense Qi, becomes deficient. So when we're weak and tired, in the elderly or the very young, those with reduced immunity, so post-chemotherapy or something like that, and after period or after having given birth. If the pathogen's excessively strong, protracted or sudden, so for example a particularly hot day or a sudden cold spell, or a nasty virus, or an internal build-up of the pathogen can increase our susceptibility. So if we have a damp diet or we live in a damp environment or both, damp can increase internally, and that might make us particularly vulnerable to wind damp invasions. So an important note is that a condition like wind cold invading the lungs describes where the pathogen is located and not where it came from. And we also describe a condition as being dampness, and this is not saying that it's caused by dampness or that it's a manifestation of dampness, but both at the same time. So we have this circular way of understanding health. So these E.P.Fs manifest on the exterior as colds, coughs, flus, acute problems. They manifest in the joints as B syndrome, arthritis, and they can directly invade into some of the organs, the stomach, the uterus and the intestines. So wind relates to the wood element and to the liver. So examples are a head cold, hives or hay fever. So it's a Yang Pathogenic Factor, tends to be sudden, tends to be upward in direction, and tends to be drying. It's said to be the spearhead of disease, so it's the pathogen that drives other pathogens in to the exterior or into the joints with it. It arises quickly and changes rapidly, moves location swiftly and blows intermittently. So things that come and go, things that come out of nowhere, things that suddenly change, things that change very rapidly, are characteristic of wind. It's also characterized by upward and outward dispersion. So channel problems that affect the extremities or the upper body, dizziness, head colds, typical of wind. It's also said to make things shake and sway, and this is really talking about internal wind, so tremor, tic, unconsciousness, epilepsy, things of that nature. The character shows a sail on the outside, so the image of the wind, and the inside is an insect, a flying insect. So it has this idea of being an environmental factor, but also a contagious one. So cold is a yin pathogenic factor and consumes yang qi, so it tends to be slow and it tends to have a downward and inward nature. It impairs moving and warming functions, so it tends to cause stagnation and cold, chilliness. It contracts the tissues, obstructs the circulation of qi and blood, and causes pain. So cramping, chilblains, frostbite, menstrual pain, strong, intense pains in the joints. So the character shows a building on the top. This building has been stuffed full of hay, and the reason for that is that outside we have ice. So damp relates to the spleen and to the earth element. So examples: candida, arthritis, athlete's foot, or a tummy bug. So it's a yin pathogenic factor. It tends to be slow and insidious. It impairs yang. Oops, I missed that off. So it can lead to poor appetite, poor digestion, and easily obstructs the circulation of qi. So it can cause blocked feelings, heaviness, tiredness, blocked digestion, bloating, muzzy head, impedes the circulation of qi. It's characterized by heaviness, so it can lead to a heavy head, heavy body, heavy mood. It tends to sink into the lower body, so it affects the knees, affects the genitals, affects the legs, affects the lower body. And it's characterized by dirtiness, so we tend to get discharges, mucus. And it's sticky and lingering. It tends to be stubborn, difficult to treat, slow to go. The character shows water on the left hand side, which has been contracted, and the right hand side has the sun and silk being left out to dry. Summer heat relates to the fire element and to the heart. So examples: sunburn, sunstroke, summer cold. It's a yang pathogenic factor, so tends to be drying, tends to be sudden, tends to have an upward direction, characterized by an upward direction, dispersion and consumption of the body fluids. So dehydration, dry lips, dark scanty urine, aversion to heat, rapid pulse, red tongue. So dryness relates to the metal element and to the lungs. It's a yang pathogenic factor, again sudden and upwards, tends to injure the blood and yin. So dry mouth, dry throat, dry nose, dry lips, dry skin, dry stools, scanty urination. Things like a dry cough, losing your voice, constipation, dry skin. So the character shows fire on the left, flames rising up, and the right is a phonetic. It actually shows the bottom is a tree, and we've got birds sitting in the tree, so it's noisy, but it has no meaning. So again, we have the character of just flames rising up. Fire relates to the fire element and to the heart. Examples: rage, mania, migraine, high blood pressure is where we might see it. These days we think of fire as being internally generated, mostly from emotions. So fire is a yang pathogenic factor, characterized by an upward direction. So mouth ulcers, headaches, bitter taste, tends to affect the ears, eyes, nose and throat. It injures the blood and the yin, so it leads to dryness, dry mouth, constipation, dark urine. So it depletes the qi, can be depleting over time, and it particularly disturbs the shen, so it can lead to insomnia, rage, mania, agitation. Makes the blood reckless and leads to bleeding, so this might be nosebleeds, heavy periods, bleeding from anywhere can be caused by fire. When these pathogens affect the joints, we get different types of B syndrome. So heat gives us febrile B, damp gives us fixed B, cold gives us painful B, and wind gives us wandering B. So this is a very brief introduction to the external causes of disease.